Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have a returning good brother to the temple, previously known for Abaddon, the 13 Seals, now coming back to us with the console RPG inspired project Skies Above, which currently has an Ashcan version available on itch and DriveThruRPG. Link for that in the low bar. The one and only Lost Heaven. How you doing today, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you for coming back. I know it's a bit of a climb up to the temple, and there's been a bit of a facelift since the last time you were here. So, obviously, we don't need to go into the origin story or the like. Instead, I'll go into when did the Skies Above idea first start to manifest? Was this something that been in the background for a while, or was it a more recent thing?
Yeah, so the Skies Above had been in the background for a while. I actually started working on it before I started working on Abaddon. But yeah, like I'm doing most of the art for the game. And I hit a point where I didn't quite feel that I could deliver on the visuals for the book as an artist, and so kind of sidelined it for a bit until I got a little bit more practice in on the style that I kind of wanted to go for and the vibe that I wanted for the game. And then as soon as that kind of clicked together, it kind of put me back in the headspace for continuing to work on it.
I can certainly get that. We have seen a growing amount of TTRPGs drawing upon console RPGs in the last year. You know, with things, even though it isn't directly doing so, it's in that same vein with stuff like Cloudbreaker Alliance, with Fabula Ultima, with Break. Obviously, I'm not immune to that rising trend with my own work.
Yeah.
But it definitely seems that Skies Above is. It's not doing what Fabula Ultima is doing, for instance, in trying to be a generic JTTRPG as it calls itself. With you have a setting. So I'm curious if this is a chicken and egg situation, but did the setting come first and then you built rules around it, or did the idea of doing console RPG rules of tabletop form come first and then you built the setting around it?
The setting kind of came first. I actually ran a Anima Beyond Fantasy campaign for a while in my homebrew setting, which big chunks of Skies Above borrows from. But Anima is fun if you've got the right group for it. But it can be a little bit overwhelming, and I wanted to then make something a little bit more user-friendly, and something a little closer to the games that I played a lot, like on the Super Nintendo and PlayStation 1. So a more simplified combat system. It's all a bit more reminiscent to those turn-based RPGs that you'll be familiar with. And so that's what I thought.
I can certainly get that. especially given some of the names that you name dropped in the first chapter, which, as an aside, I did get a kick out of each chapter being named after an element.
Yep.
But with the approach that you're going with, would it be fair for me to say that Skies Above is a kind of post-apocalypse? In the sense that the apocalypse certainly happened, but enough time has passed that new civilizations have cropped up.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I've been describing it as a post-apocalypse game, but like bright and colorful instead of like greedy and sand-colored like Mad Max or Fallout. Where there was a world before the one the game set in. It was destroyed in a magical apocalypse, and the world that the players are playing in is centuries after that happened. People have kind of readjusted to how the world is at this point in time. Where everything is floating in clouds, and new technologies had to be developed to travel, but there's still lots of remnants of the past to be discovered. There's still factions that kind of cling on to the old world. Post-apocalypse is probably a really good description for the game setting.
Yeah. It's not the first time I've used that analogy. The difference between the two is how long after the bomb dropped. Figuratively speaking, of course. With a post-apocalypse, the bomb has dropped. The bomb has dropped. The world has ended, but it's been so long since that happened that whole new civilizations, cultures, and the like have started to make their presence known.
Yeah, and some of those cultures may have some similarities to what came before, but a lot of information has been lost, and so they've had to kind of fill in the blanks on their own.
But now, of course, one of the main things that I noticed was going with a D8 system, an exploding D8 system, but a D8 system nonetheless. What prompted that particular die size? Because that's a very deliberate choice.
Yeah, that's a deliberate choice, and this is the fourth game actually that I've designed at this point. And I make very deliberate choices like this for action resolution mechanics. Like, my first game, Irozumi, which is a Yakuza game, is a Caltrop game, so it only uses D4s, but in Japanese culture, the number 4 is an unlucky number. It's very close to the word for death in Japanese. And I felt that a Yakuza-themed game pretty well. And Abaddon, it's playing cards, and so there's a lot of tie-ins to either the number 13, which is the number of cards in a suit, or the number 4, which is the number of suits in a deck. But for Skies, there are 8 elemental goddesses. And goddesses sort of factor into everything in the world. And so a D8, one side for each goddess, kind of felt like it would be a good little nod to things in game, as well as just like it's an uncommon dice to use for a system, so like there's a little bit of novelty to it as well.
Yeah, I can see it. Now, when it comes to the way character creation works, what I do find interesting is that you have a skill system, but it's not necessarily a flat bonus. If anything, the skill system reminds me of the skill levels in Veil of the Void, where it can result in a modifier, but it's not a straight 1-to-1.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that was done so that things don't get to so that the effect of skills can have a bit more variety than just number go up.
Yeah, it's a little bit more interesting. It means you have a little bit more control game design wise over how high the numbers can actually go, and that makes designing mechanical elements a little bit easier. So it's for my benefit, as well as being a bit more interesting for players as well.
Yeah, I can get that. Now, when it comes to the job system that you have, which of course something like this was going to have a job system. A lot of the ones are pretty self-explanatory. The only one that didn't get detailed in the Ashcan was Biomancer, but based on what I'm reading, Biomancer would be somewhat analogous to a Blue Mage in Final Fantasy. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty much what they are. Is they study monsters and they can learn spells from the information they sort of gather from that study.
Yeah,
Blue Mage is pretty much the inspiration there for Biomancer.
And some of the other ones are pretty obvious, like Dark Mage is definitely channeling Black Mage. Invoker is definitely channeling Summoner, down to the fact that whips were a summoner weapon in early games.
Yeah, in early Final Fantasies, yeah.
And given the fact that weapon proficiency is a skill in itself, how do you channel that to make sure that the warrior has its own spot? Since fighter is that one archetype that's gotten a bit of a bum rap over the years.
Yeah, so like there are 4 martial archetypes in the game. They get the biggest amount of weapon proficiencies to start with, but like weapons and Skies Above, all the weapons have their own unique trait when you use them. So like axes are good at ignoring shields, mace type weapons, pierce armor. Swords can give you either a offensive or defensive bonus because they're versatile. Spears are very much a defensive weapon. And so the warrior being a martial archetype, with that spread of points that they get that other archetypes don't, gives them a little bit more flexibility in terms of the type of weapons that they're using.
What about instruments? Since that's a big thing for bards.
So instruments have random charm effect. They can slow enemies or temporarily put them to sleep when they score critical hits.
Yeah. And speaking of that, you do have a somewhat different approach when it comes to handling criticals, in the sense that because of the fact that rolling an 8 is an exploding effect, instead criticals are more about an over success, i.e. getting 8 points over the target's defense.
Yeah. And that's at number 8 coming in again. So yeah, for every 8 that you can get over your target number will give you an additional critical level. More damage or more effects that can be thrown around with spells and stuff like that. And they all add into there's a limit break system in Skies as well, and scoring critical hits allows you to build that up.
Yeah, the overdrive stacks, which so far it appears that overdrive stacks are used to give yourself an additional turn, but I'm guessing there will be job-specific benefits that do spend overdrive in the future.
Yeah, I'll be looking into expanding that, but at the moment it's almost like Bravely default, like the Brave system, where like you can, if you've got enough overdrive stats, you can perform multiple actions in your round during combat. So you can chain together abilities or spells or other things.
I can certainly get that. And with that in mind, when it comes to advancing across levels, is it a case where your job is going to give you certain benefits at different levels, or is it a case of every time you level up, you choose a benefit from a list?
So I put out an update yesterday to the Ashcan. It has the experience requirements and the advancement from up to level 11. So every level you get extra HP and MP, but it rotates around what you get. So at level 2 you get extra skill ranks. At level 3 you get to choose a new ability. Level 4 you get an additional weapon proficiency rank. At level 5 you get an attribute point and you get an additional stack of overdrive.
Also,
every 5 levels.
Overdrive is capped.
Yep. You can generate up to 8 points overdrive, which gives you enough a stack, which you can then use to perform an extra action. So at level 5, you can then build up to 2 stacks, so you can perform 3 actions in a round. At level 10, you get an additional stack. So by the time you hit level 20, if you kind of charge up your overdrive, you can then perform like 5 actions in a round. Which allows you to combo a lot of your abilities with yourself.
When it comes to job abilities, is it a case where you get the whole group in one go, or is it a case where you're picking which ones you're going to get at each level?
Yeah, you choose one at level 1, and then whenever you get a new job ability, you pick an additional one. Mages are different, where they learn spells more regularly. They learn a new spell every level.
Which I can certainly get that.
Yeah.
Now with that in mind, I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be a priority now, but have you given thought to multi-classing down the road in development?
Multi-classing is built in. At level 10, you choose a second job role. That allows you, if you're like started as a light or a dark mage, then at level 10 you can choose the opposite, and then you can start to build your kind of red mage type character, or you can go like a paladin and take some light and go build into light mage, and then you end up with healing abilities as well as all your defensive stuff. And so it's built into the system. Level 10, you choose a second job role, and then you can match the abilities.
Oh yeah, I can certainly get that. What do you have? Do you have in mind a particular level cap, like around 20 or something, or is it a case of you keep going as long as you keep having the campaign go that long?
At the moment, level 20 is the cap, but I might increase it at some point down the line.
I could certainly see that possibility. Now, when it comes to the Skyfolk, the races, ethnicities, what have you, it looks like each of them has their own traits. I'm guessing that no Skyfolk has more than 3 features that it grants.
Yeah, they all have 2 or 3 features that they get. Some of them are kind of powerful, other ones are very situational, so that has an effect on whether they get 2 or 3.
Yeah. Given that rule of 8 regarding the 8 goddesses, is there a similar rule of 8 with the Skyfolk?
Initially, there was going to be, and then I got a little bit carried away and added in some extra Skyfolk options.
Yeah.
But at the moment, like all of the Skyfolk have like a children of one of the elemental goddesses, but none of them are children of light or darkness. They're all very much the other 6 elements in the game.
And speaking of that, when it comes to the eight goddesses, and you kind of answered one of the questions I was going to have on Skyfolk. Is that somewhat analogous to the different types of the different elemental spirits that there were in, say, Legend of Mana, and just the Mana series in general?
Yeah, where there's light, dark, fire, water, wind, earth, and then you have ice and lightning are the 2 additional.
Mm-hmm.
And the book is split into the 8 sections that are all kind of flavored by those.
And I do think it's important to make the distinction about like darkness as the element, because it'd be very easy for someone to think, okay, that's the evil element, when in a lot of cases darkness is just the absence of light, not necessarily evil, though some claim it to be.
Yeah. And like chapter wise, darkness does cover monsters in the book, but in the world section there's a bit of information on the 8 goddesses already there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of careful to point out that darkness isn't necessarily evil, that the goddess of darkness does reside over things like hope and dreams. She's the goddess of night, and so not everything is evil. And I was also keen to do the same thing with the goddess of light and show that light isn't always good, that people can abuse it or manipulate it. And so like the game doesn't really play around with the ideas of good and evil. It's more of a order versus chaos type dynamic.
And I've said this elsewhere, and this will be a bit of a hot take, but I think Shin Megami Tensei has a better understanding of alignment than the world's most litigious role-playing game does.
Yep.
Because in most of the Mega 10 games, it is largely focused on order and chaos. Light and darkness are alignments in it, but they don't have as much narrative focus.
Yeah.
Order is usually represented by the Messianic cult in some form, whereas chaos is represented by the Ring of Gaia. One of them promotes order, but that order can be totalitarianism at its extreme, and the other promotes freedom, but in reality is promoting anarchism. And usually the best ending in Mega 10 games is rejecting both of them.
It's finding a balance.
You've got a similar thing with the Eternal Champion meta series, which Elric is a part of, where both the gods of order and chaos are equal levels of asshole.
Yeah. And like D&D, the dragon game, whatever you want to call it, I think was originally supposed to be very inspired by the Eternal Champion series, and it was supposed to be chaos, neutrality, and order, but
it was.
They couldn't help but add good and evil.
But
yeah.
But when it comes to that one, it's a case of trying to grab from a bunch of sources, but not having a unifying voice, which I think because that wasn't really the intent. and that's why I keep making fun of the fact that that game has had a problem of not putting its foot down regarding what kind of fantasy it is.
Yeah.
I similarly had the same problem with Fabula, where I'm like, okay, JRPG is a wide net. You need to put your foot down on something, or put your foot down on something, and don't claim that you're trying to be a wide net. You can't do both.
Yeah.
Whereas Skies Above very much puts its foot down as far as what it is.
Yeah, there's a clear setting, although there's flexibility in that. Like, there's things there that are very broad in terms, but there's scope for the GM and players to kind of do their own thing with it.
Which is fair. I would add, you need to understand the rules before you can break them.
Yeah. And then there's I tend not to play with good and evil too much. Like, Abaddon was different because, you're dealing with a game where demons are the main threat, so like good and evil is very much the theme, but then reading into Abaddon, like the gods of light and angels and stuff aren't necessarily what you would consider 100% good. But with Skies Above, none of the goddesses are evil, none of them are good, they're all forces of nature.
More akin to Fae.
Yeah, and that's... I think that just there's a better sense of freedom where you're not having to concern yourself too much with being a good guy or being a bad guy, but like you're kind of free to explore a range of motivations and emotions and stuff like that in the game.
Oh yeah. And since airships are a big deal within the setting, I mean it's part of the logo for God's sake. Do you plan on having the possibility of say the party getting a hold of their own airship and customizing that the way one would do with a character?
Yeah, so the game has like limitations on how much equipment and stuff characters can carry. It's not like nitty gritty. You're not weighing pounds or kilos or whatever. It's like there's slots that you have, so characters can definitely invest their shared treasure into acquiring their own airship and making it a base of operations for their adventures, and they can store stuff there, and it'll probably play a point in the plot if that's how your campaign's going, where one player might have to pilot it while other players are having to maybe put out fires or manage weapons or whatever during encounters. But yeah, like I'm actually working on a sci-fi game where that's more of a thing where like your starfighters are essentially their own thing as well as your character, but like airships are going to have a prominent role in Skies Above, and players will definitely be able to get a hold of their own, make some modifications to use it as a mobile base that they can travel between islands, and so yeah, airships are going to be important.
Now, when it comes to propulsion of those airships, is it mostly through some sort of crystal? Are they going to be using semi-wind assistance? How do you envision airships working?
They are a combination of crystals, which are solidified magic. And a lot of the Magitech in Skies Above has been developed to use those crystals to power itself. Then, yeah, they have sails, they have propellers, and all that sort of stuff. So wind currents and things will aid in the travel, but like mostly they are crystal powered Magitech constructions.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. And in that same vein, do you plan on having some sort of rules when it comes to events happening during travel, like what
Yep,
weather events and the like?
So one of the chapters, which in the first Ashcan draft didn't have any information on it, which was Journeys. I've retitled that chapter now to be Chronicles instead, so it covers a wide range of things like rewarding your players, but it will also cover navigating journeys, hazards that can happen on both land and sky, and a variety of biomes as well. And so yeah, there'll be things that can crop up that your players will need to overcome that won't just be fighting monsters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can get that, especially since you have a whole host of crafting skills.
Yeah.
And crafting is one of those things that a lot of RPGs have tried, and results have been mixed, I suppose.
Yeah.
Some do it better than others. A lot of them trying to realistically replicate crafting disciplines, which in my opinion does not work because of the fact that most people playing a TTRPG don't have any blacksmithing experience so a lot of that detail is going to be lost on them.
Or like they're not chemists, so they don't know how different chemicals and things interact with each other. Or so the crafting system for Sky is like in the equipment section, you'll notice that pretty much all the weapon and armor and stuff is all simple. And the idea is through your journeys, through defeating monsters, during your downtime, you'll acquire different crafting materials that you can then build upon the simple templates for everything. It might be things like higher quality steel will give you weapons that do more damage or have an attack bonus or something like that, or it might be you've refined some air crystals and iron together to give you armor that is lighter, or shields that are a little bit more flexible that will give you bigger bonuses to your defenses and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there'll be crafting recipes, but they'll be more simplified, where it's like you need like 2 steel, 1 whatever, plus 1 whatever, and then you need to spend X amount of gold and time during your downtime to kind of make it work.
Mm-hmm.
If you fail your crafting roll, then you'll lose some of the resources. If you're getting criticals, then you can add extra effects, or you can save on some of the resources that you'd have to expend and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, with that in mind, when I looked at the combat, one of the things I found interesting is instead of going with theater of the mind or going with full grid combat, you went with a front row back row system.
Yeah.
Now, obviously that's going to draw my attention given my own work, but was doing that just a means to emulate the inspirations?
So like some of my favorite role-playing games use stance-based combat instead of full-on grids. Like I'm a big fan of the One Ring. Abaddon uses stance-based combat as well. And this was just taking that and simplifying it even more, and it just so happens to line up with the source material. Where it just makes things easier to set up. Combat is very much about action resolution. And yeah, it simplifies things so you can run it theatre of the mind. You could sit there with like miniatures or whatever at your game table or on your virtual tabletop and set them up so you know if things are in the front or back row. It gives you some flexibility, but also simplifies combat, so it shouldn't drag on for like 2 or 3 hours at a time, like some other games.
Yeah, and in that now, following on with that, especially when it comes to source material emulation, I am curious if in the full book you have, or even in like a GM's, even in some GM like section, you have plans for certain famous equipment, basically the equivalent of legendary items that you would see in a Final Fantasy or in a Grandia or whatnot.
Yep. And the Chronicles section of the book, which used to be titled Journeys, there's going to be stuff for GMs to make artifact type items that the players wouldn't necessarily be able to craft, that they really do need to be gifted or to find during their adventure. So, yeah.
I can definitely see that. Essentially, some form of magic item creation system for the GM to give out.
Yeah, that's a little bit more whimsical than the crafting system that the players have access to. Yeah.
Which, since we're dealing with a post-apocalypse, that does honestly track. And when it comes to monsters, I did see that you do have a few entries in there, but I am curious if in either an updated version of the Ashcan or just down the road you plan on putting in some advice on how to customize the individual entries.
Yeah, so like at the moment, I'm like, I always find that getting to grips on monster design for tabletop games is one of the hardest things to do. It was definitely one of the last things that I kind of figured out when I was designing Abaddon. It's probably going to be one of the last things that I figure out with Skies Above, like kind of refining it to the point where I can come up with a method that GMs can use for building their own monsters. But the game is going to have a decent size bestiary in it on its own. But yeah, having some guidelines for how you can maybe customize existing monsters or build your own is definitely something that I want to include in there. It might be things like putting in templates that you can apply to other monsters, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. But yeah, I'll definitely, being towards the end of the game development, I'll start thinking about how to add those sort of systems in.
Yeah, especially since each monster that you have has a set level.
Yep.
And
so yeah, it might just be like a leveling chart where, yeah, if you're adding extra levels to a monster, then you do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, that's one possibility, of course. And there's always those rare variants of monsters, as well as the whole tradition of hidden bosses throughout console RPGs. Some of them a little bit meaner than others.
Yep.
And of course, when I say a little bit meaner than others, I'm talking about every Tri-Ace game I've played in my entire life.
Yeah. As a GM, you might want to throw something like that in.
Mm-hmm. You already kind of have. I guess those would count as boss enemies, but I feel like they should be classified as super bosses. Because whenever those sort of hidden bosses show up in a console RPG, it is always a case of at your own risk. This is out of the way. If you're going into this place, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, like you know you're in for a fight. Like, as a GM, you'd probably build up the tension for something like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, given that, I know you put out a update recently, but when, what would you foresee as far as the next update? What's the immediate future of Skies Above in terms of what you're working on?
Okay, so the update that I just put out has an experience table for player characters that tells you how much experience you need, what you get when you level up.
Mm-hmm.
In the Chronicles section, it gives you some guidelines for rewarding players with experience and gold and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not combat's actually one of the least, or like it's one of a few things that you can get experience for. So like there's guidance there for the length of your game session. I'm a strong advocate that if your players are willing to, take the time out to play your game, then they should get a little something for it. So there's experience for session length, story progression, puzzles, obstacles, and hazards, discovering new locations, as well as experience for defeating monsters.
Mm-hmm.
There's some guidelines in there for collaborative world building. So it's a pretty simple system where like the GM might have the GM will give the players free facts about a new location that they're heading to, and then the players get the opportunity to sort of build on that. And then you kind of, once that's done, you can jump into the narrative, and everybody has an idea of the island that they're kind of heading to and what they might expect to encounter there.
Mm-hmm.
More monsters in the future, more boss monsters, adding some new abilities to some of the job classes, adding in the Biomancer, but I have a feeling that that'll be done a bit closer to when I've got a better grasp on how the monsters should be designed. Because the whole part of that job role is that they learn abilities from monsters.
And if I'm being honest, from my own experience, Blue Mage, its particular magic is hard to design for because just the source material is all over the place regarding blue magic compared to other disciplines.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm kind of leaning towards all the jobs have their own unique skills to them, and so it'd be a biomancy test at the end of a combat with some monsters to see if you've got any closer to learning how to manifest some of their abilities on your own. The crafting system is probably the next big thing, though, that I'll be kind of working towards. I've got a rough idea of how I want it to work. I need to come up with some basic crafting recipes to kind of play around with. But yeah, in the Ashcan update, it will probably have at least a basic crafting system so players can get a feel for how that'll work in the final game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can get that. Now, do you have a timeline as far as going from the current Ashcan version to a full-on release, whether it be through a crowdfund or just directly putting on DTRPG and itch?
So I'll be doing a crowdfunder in June for Skies Above. The game's already been in development for a while up to this point. I want to do some more intense test plays, like some mini campaign, to get a broader. At the moment, it's been mostly combat tests or very brief sessions of testing where it might be like skill scenarios where like I'm testing how the skills work. So I want to now kind of bring that together, do like a mini campaign, 6 or 8 sessions to get a feel for how the game actually runs as a game. But yeah, I'm hoping to do the crowdfunder in June. It's going to run for 28 days. It'll be on Kickstarter. And hopefully by the end of the year, end of 2025, people will definitely have a PDF version to work from, and I should be getting print copies sent out if the campaign's successful. The book's going to be about 200-ish pages, somewhere between 200 and 250 by my estimates at the moment.
I'd say that's a pretty standard range.
Yeah, I'm using the same manufacturer I use for Abaddon, so I've already spoke to them. They've given me some prices, and so that's gave me a sort of target goal for the Kickstarter that I plan on launching later in the year.
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, I will certainly be looking forward to seeing how it develops. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my temple and enjoy the madness that happens here.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open.
Awesome, looking forward to it. Yep. Said I've got other game projects in the works, so yeah, we can.
Of course, because designers cannot sit still.
Oh no! Yeah, I've got like at least half a dozen other projects at various stages of development in the background.
Yeah. I'm not. I often have to tell people that when you have that design mindset, it's not something you can just turn off, even when you're on quote unquote holiday.
Yeah.
But of course, a sincere thanks also goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody!